Hey guys, and welcome to the Simply Soccer podcast. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you really quickly. I know I made a video on this, and I also said thank you on Snapchat. But I just want to thank you guys once again for 50,000 subscribers. It's unbelievable, and I really couldn't do what I do and make the videos without you guys. And I just hope that I can continue to make content in the future that and at the present moment that'll help you, benefit you, and hopefully in some way impact you in a positive way, and also help me to grow as well as I continue to make more and more videos and become better and better at what I'm doing. So thank you very much for that. And I really hope you're enjoying the content. Remember, I'm always open to suggestions on things that can be improved, whether it's the podcast, whether it's normal videos, whether it's, doing some new things with content. I'm really malleable in that way, so never feel afraid or reluctant to give me a suggestion on things that you want to see. Of course, I've got a lot of ideas and things already in the works, but I'm always open to it, and I've already made so many videos and podcasts and pieces of content based on suggestions that I get. So today I want to talk about a couple things. The first thing that I want to talk about, I'm actually going to make a very short video on this too, very similar to the video I made recently, where I was just kind of in the garden going over an idea, more of a personalized video, like kind of one-on-one almost, where it was just kind of vlogging style, where I went over, I believe, jealousy versus inspiration. And so I'm going to do a podcast on, I might talk about that a little more as well, but what I want to talk about in this one mainly, instead of inspiration versus jealousy, is consistency versus intensity. Now, if you watched the video I put out recently called The Power of Repetition in Soccer, which if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you watch that one. I put a lot of work into that one. I really like it. It's a really good video, and it's one of those videos where it's such a simple idea, but it's something that if you actually started doing it regularly, you would start seeing things change. It's amazing how quickly things can change if you stick with them and you do them in the right way and you keep experimenting and adjusting and challenging. So if you haven't seen that video, please go check it out. It should be a video before this one or maybe a couple before this one, but I highly recommend that. And in it, I mentioned this topic, which was consistency versus intensity. I showed a clip of Simon Sinek talking about it, and he was going over that the more important one is consistency over intensity. So I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail today and what my beliefs behind that are and why I think that is absolutely the case. For the longest time, I've been an advocate, I guess, for doing something on a daily basis, or at least on a consistent basis, because you can't do everything daily. Certain physical things you can't do on a daily basis because you have to rest, but doing it as consistently as your body will allow. And so that's what I want to kind of talk about. So essentially, let's kind of like break them down first, one being consistency and one being intensity. So intensity can be good, like when you do intense, like if I do an interval workout training, which I do a lot of at the moment, it's more of an intense workout, high intensity, where other days I'll do like a medium intensity where it's kind of like a distance run, or maybe some light drills, and those are kind of more, just to maintain instead of growing. Intensity definitely helps you grow in the sense that you're pushing yourself to your limits. But the thing is, you can't push yourself to your limits in a physical way every single day because your body's going to break down and not fully recover. And this is where consistency comes in, and I think is incredibly important. And it's like Simon Sinek said in that clip I mentioned or showed during the Power of Repetition video. And what he said is, you can't go to the gym and just work out for 9 hours and expect to get in shape. But if you go to the gym for 20 minutes every single day, you're going to get in shape. And so what happens is, if you start doing something every single day, it starts stacking up and you start building what's called momentum. So if you are consistent with what you're doing, so for, let's say he's, for example, using the gym, if you went to the gym every minute for 20 days and, you were strategic about it, you did running, you did weights, whatever it may be. And 20 minutes, this is an arbitrary number. We're just talking about every day. For some people, it might be longer. Other days, for example, some days I'm in the gym for a very quick 20-minute workout and then like stretching afterwards. And then there are other days where I'm in there for over an hour. It depends. But what he's saying is if you maintain that consistency, even if you were only doing 20 minutes, I think he was making an example out of it. He was saying all it would take is 20 minutes so long as you were doing it on a consistent basis. Where if you tried to do everything at once, you're not going to get the results that you want. And I've had players, and this is, I think, important because I've had players who have commented saying, what if I what if I practice for 6 hours on Saturday instead of doing an hour 6 days a week? And I tell them that's not what you want to do for many reasons. One, your body can't handle, for most people, 6 hours in one day. For some people, like a professional athlete, it can because, they wouldn't probably do 6 hours all at once. They'd probably split it into 3 2-hour workouts or in some other variation. But you would not get the most benefit out of that because you don't understand if you're not fully rested, if you're not fully focused in your practicing, you're not getting as much out of the practice as you could. Where if you're just doing 30 minutes or 40 minutes of focused, zoned in flow practice, you're getting the, full benefits out of that training. So for example, let's say you do a 30-minute training session focusing on your dribbling and you have your drills laid out and you are fully focused on doing it. You're focused on everything. You recognize that when you make a mistake and you correct it and you're just completely in the moment, completely in the zone and completely in flow. And by the end of it, yeah, you're a little tired, but you're not exhausted to the point that you're about to keel over. Now, let's say instead you do 3 hours of training where there's no breaks. It's just 1 3-hour session. By after the first hour, you're going to start to lose some of your concentration. You're going to start to lose some of your focus and motivation. You're going to start to knock yourself out of that flow state, which helps you to learn faster. You're going to knock yourself out of that mindfulness and presence while practicing, which isn't going to allow you to get the most out of practice. That's why it's much better to do, and this is only an example. Again, the time will vary. Don't think I'm saying, oh, you only have to do 30 minutes. I'm just giving this as an example. But it would be much more beneficial to do 30-minute individual sessions that equated to 3 hours than instead of doing 1 3-hour straight session, right? So that's what I want you to really take away from this. When you're thinking, you know what, instead of doing an hour every day, I'll just do 7 hours on the weekend, you're not going to get as much out of it. Now, there will be cases where, you have time constraints and you need to work around that. But I would much rather you did 20 minutes of something every day. So let's say you want to work on your dribbling and you did 20 minutes of you can vary the dribbling drills, but it was 20 minutes of dribbling every day. I would much rather you did that than do, all at once, 3-4 hours of that on the weekend. Because when you do something once and then leave a gap between that session and the next time you do it, you don't build consistency, which builds very powerful habits. So you're not going to build a habit, which is, you just that's not a good thing. That's not utilized. That's not getting as much benefit as you could be getting, but it's also not building momentum. And momentum is incredibly powerful, incredibly beneficial. If you've ever, for any of you who work out consistently, you've felt the effects of momentum where you got to a certain point where going to the gym wasn't a problem. Right? There might have been some resistance, but the resistance was nowhere near as strong as it was in the beginning or when you were initially developing that habit, right? So your resistance to working out diminished over time as you continued to be consistent and you picked up momentum, right? You got more excited about it. You started seeing more changes in your body. You started seeing results and momentum. It just kept building and building and building and building to the point where you created a habit. And that's where you want to get at, right? Again, by intensely doing it one day, but not consistently doing it over time, you're not building that habit. I'm sure there's ways you could do it, but it's not the most practical way to do it. Now, when I'm talking about intensity in this manner, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't have intense training sessions because you should. You should have some training sessions where after the training session, you're dying. You're panting, you're out of breath, you're super tired. You have pushed yourself beyond your limits. not towards injury. You don't want to push yourself too hard, but you've pushed yourself to a point where you've gone beyond your comfort zone, right? Now, I'm not saying I want you to do that every day because you need time to recover, but that's essentially, for example, when I have a high intensity interval training, I'm pushing my body beyond its homeostasis, which is its comfort zone. I'm pushing it to a new level. That's what I'm trying to develop, where if I just do it at a medium intensity, that's more maintenance. That's just to kind of maintain the level I'm already at. That's not going to help me get to that next level of fitness. If I do the drills exactly the same way without an additional element of intensity or an additional challenge, I'm not going to hit a new level. This is why if you've watched a few of my videos, and I always recommend that it's good to play with players who are at your level or beyond, this is one of the reasons, because it forces you to become accustomed to a higher level. It puts you outside your comfort zone, where if you're playing with players who are nowhere near your level, it's way too easy. You can just go through the motions. Sure, it can be fun. Like, I've played on teams where it wasn't at the level I needed it to be, and it was fun, but it lost its fun and it became boring at a certain point, and I wasn't learning from it because it just wasn't, at a certain point you move beyond it. So you do need that challenge, and you do need that intensity, but consistency trumps it. Okay? So you can start getting into routines though where you kind of sprinkle intensity into it. Like I said, I do usually 2 interval training days in my workout. Usually I'm trying to do cardio 6 days a week. This is a new routine I'm kind of fiddling with at the moment. It's basically cardio every single day. I give myself 1 day of rest, but I try and do something on that day because I don't like just sitting around, and I'm making sure I'm stretching every day, and I don't like to stretch before having actually done something that's getting my blood pumping. So I might do a quick 10-minute thing to get my blood pumping. I might go kick a ball around and do something to get my blood pumping, then stretch. But for the main part, 6 days of cardio. I'm trying to interject about 2 days to 3 days of weights in there, which is going to be all body. I'm still doing foundation training. And then it's 2 days of high intensity interval training. And I'm thinking about adding a third because I'm getting to the off season. I'm still in season right now, so I need to be careful. But we're coming up to the last game. We're in the playoffs. And if we win the next game, we're in the final. So after the season's over, I'm going right back into probably a few more high intensity training. So you can put intense training into your routine. I'm defining intensity a bit differently here. I'm just saying that consistency should trump intensity, right? Because again, when you think of just 1 intense training a week compared to 6 or 7 consistent everyday training of 20 to 30 minutes, those stack up. The intensity training doesn't, right? Your body starts to get more used to it. One of my favorite quotes is by Robin Sharma, and I don't know if this is his quote or it's something that he's quoting someone else, but he says that your life is your days are your life in miniature. And what he's saying there is what you do every day is going to stack up to essentially form your week, which will form your month, your years, your decades, your life. Meaning what you do on a daily basis is going to determine the outcome of everything for you, essentially. It's more nuanced than that, but that's why consistency is so incredibly important. And one thing I think that's very powerful and can really help you to start feeling the effects of this, of consistency, of repetition, of momentum, and I've gone over this many times, is doing a 30-day challenge. Now, if you've never done a 30-day challenge before, you can start off with a 7-day challenge and then add 3 more days. And then suddenly you have a 10-day challenge once you've completed the first 7, then move to 20, then up until 30. And the reason I like 30 is because by the time you hit 30, if you've been doing it every day, you're kind of feeling good. You're feeling the results, or you're seeing some results. You're feeling momentum a little bit, and you should absolutely go beyond that for the things you want to develop in habits, because I think it's on average, it takes like 67 or 66 days to 66 days, I believe, is the latest study, is the latest number to form a habit. And habits can take anywhere from like 18 days to like 200 something days or something, but the average is like 66 for certain habits. And that's why I like 30-day challenges, because it gives you a taste of it. And trust me, it feels really good. Like, you feel really good sticking with something for 30, like when you write something down and you're like, I'm going to do this for the next 30 days, every single day without missing a day, and you complete that, it's a really good feeling. You made a pact with yourself. You made a agreement with yourself that you're going to stick to this thing and you're going to be consistent with whatever it is for 30 days. And when you feel the feeling that it comes with completing that, you're going to want to do more and more 30-day challenges. Here's the thing, though, and here's something I've actually been seeing recently, or been reading about recently, is one of the things you don't want to do is stop starting 30-day challenges. You're creating a terrible habit if you do that. So what I mean is, if you continually, and I had this problem for a little bit when I first started out 30-day challenges, and then again when I got back into them, I had this problem where I would start and then stop. Like I'd make it 2 weeks, and then I would miss a day or 2 or 3, and then it would fall on the wayside, right? That's a bad habit to develop. That's why there's an article, and I can link that article in the description here, but it goes over what to do if that's happening to you, which is basically, it's a guy called Steve Pavlina who runs one of the most popular self-development blogs on the internet. He's been doing this for, I think, decades. Maybe it is a decade. No, longer than that. He's been doing it for a really long time, and he's done tons of 30-day challenges throughout his life for a variety of different things. And he goes over, if you're having this resistance and you can't get through it, instead of setting up a 30-day challenge, do a week challenge, a 7-day challenge, and then you can work your way up to 30 days, and then you can work your way up to 60 and 90, a whole year. But the thing is, what you don't want your brain to associate with 30-day challenges is you giving up. Because if you do a 30-day challenge and then even if you make it like 20 days, but then you give up, what is going to happen on a subconscious level is your brain is going to start associating that 30-day challenge with giving up, meaning you're just going to build more resistance at that point you stop. So if you are used to quitting 30-day challenges, by the time you get to day 14, 15, 16, or whenever you usually quit, it's going to be harder for you to not quit because you've created this habit where your brain's like, okay, he says he's going to do a 30-day challenge. It's for this, but then he keeps giving up around this point. That must be what we're developing here. So you don't want those kind of associations. So make sure if you're going to do a 30-day challenge that you follow through. Now, if you've done them and you haven't followed through in the past, that's fine. That's actually happened to me plenty of times. There are plenty of times on 30-day challenges where I've not followed through. But since learning this, I've been very careful. I've started making commitments to myself. I've started making rewards and punishments for not following through, which has helped very much. There's a lot in that article on suggestions on how to stick with it, where you write out the reasons why you're doing it. You write out what happens if you complete it and what happens if you don't. So you're very abundantly aware of the benefits of pulling it off, but also the pain and what you're missing out on if you fail it. So that's really something to think about. So if you've never done a 30-day challenge, I want you to, read this article. Even if you have, it's a very interesting read from someone, again, who's done these 30-day challenges for, I think, over a decade. So he has way more experience in this than I do. But you read that and, do what he says if you're going to do a 30-day challenge. If you're having troubles, change it to a 7-day challenge. Because when you make the challenge, when you commit to the challenge and you say, I'm going to do a 7-day challenge, your brain automatically is like, okay. So when you complete that 7-day challenge, your brain knows that, and it's like, it's a victory. It feels like a victory, right? You followed through. Like, your brain doesn't know the difference between you following through on a 7-day challenge and a 30-day challenge. It just knows that you either quit or you didn't. You quit or you followed through. So you want to build the association of starting these challenges with following through, if that makes sense. You want to create the habit of following through. You do not want to create the habit of starting something and not completing it. And I think doing these challenges is a great way to start creating the habit of following through. And this is something that's going to benefit you not just within football, it's going to benefit you in other areas where you're someone who, when he starts something or she starts something, you don't quit. You go all the way through. And this is something I had to get over with. It took a while for me to get over this. And, I still have problems with this, but as long as I set up my challenges in the right way, I'm able to overcome the resistance. And actually, there's a book that I've been reading that's actually very good at helping me get through resistance. It's called What's it called? It's by Stephen Pressfield. It's called The War of Art, I believe. Really good book for any of you who have trouble following through on things or want to learn how to better overcome existence. I would definitely recommend this book. Once again, it's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It's actually a very short book, very quick read, but incredibly powerful. It's a book I'm going to read many, many, many times. It's one of those books I picked it up, and even when I was halfway through it, I'm like, I'm going to read this more than once. It's just one of those books that the ideas are that powerful and just so relatable as he's going through it that I'm like, you know, he's like describing you as as you're reading it. And you're like, this is going to be a book I come back to again and again and again. So again, The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield. I definitely recommend it if you find you're faced with a lot of resistance and you're not getting through it. Okay, so I see that we've definitely gone off on a tangent there, away from consistency versus intensity, but just recognize that start being consistent, baby steps. Like Simon Sinek said, 20 minutes a day. Start off with just 20 minutes a day, maybe not even 20 minutes a day. I mean, I can tell you what my routine right now is. A lot of you know I'm doing a challenge where I've limited my social media use, and I can tell you I'm about, I think, a month into that now, and that has been amazing so far, where I've basically deleted certain apps off my phone. I've turned off all notifications on my phone. I rarely go on to things like Facebook, or I never use Twitter. I was about to say Twitter, but I'm like, I'm never on Twitter and everything. The only thing I really use basically the challenge was so that I started using social media as a tool to improve myself and to grow SimplySoccer. Like basically using social media for my benefit instead of allowing social media to use me. Instead of browsing, I made the challenge so that I could use them as tools as intended. I mean, I don't know if that's what they're intended for, but social media can be a very powerful tool to connect you with people, to grow, whatever it is, you know, spread a message, whatever it is, if you use it in the right way. But if you're always browsing it and letting it, you know, basically suck up your attention and energy, that's not the right way. And I was having a problem with that, why I had the challenge. It's a 9-month or 90-day challenge, by the way, so I still have 60 days to go. But so far, I love it. So good so far. But another challenge I started was just a bunch of little habits I wanted to develop. Things like I have a sheet, and I'm sitting on my bed right now doing this, and my sheet's over there on the desk. But you know what? No, I'll get up and go over to it, and I'll give you some ideas of what's on it, because I think this is very important. And to give you an idea of where I'm at on my 30-day challenges. So this one's a 30-day one, and right now on this specific one, I'm just going to grab it and go back. I think I'm 9 or 10 days into it, so I'm a third of the way through. And I've already seen benefits again from this one as well. So let's see. And one thing you need to understand about really good habits is they lead to other really good habits. I've noticed that as I was going through this and as I'm doing like the social media one as well, is I start learning these new things because I'm seeking out different ideas, because I'm not wasting my energy and time on things that I don't need to be wasting my energy and time on, meaning I have more time and energy to discover things. More things just seem to pop up in my feed that are helpful, right? You know, I went on my subscriptions. One thing I did on YouTube, because YouTube's actually one of the social medias I included in this, one of the things I did is I went through all of my subscriptions and I unsubscribed from everything that was either entertainment. And not to even be like, I don't like these channels, I do, but anything that was entertainment in the sense that I would binge watch it. So I had to like unsubscribe from things like Game Grumps, because that's addictive content right there. Although, as a reward, sometimes I'll watch an episode, but it's not on my news feed anymore. And I only kept subscriptions to channels that were informationally beneficial and basically were things where the information coming in to me that I was consuming was going to help me in some way or remind me of something that I needed reminding of in some way. And that's been incredibly helpful. But it led me to other things. It led me to channels that also provided with great information. Like I came across a channel that's really good called What I've Learned. And it taught me about the Wim Hof, is it Wim? Yeah, I think it's Wim Hof method of breathing, and that's been a part of this 30-day challenge, and there's been great results from that. You know, yoga's on this. There's motivational audio I listen to every morning. I have 100 push-ups on here, so even if I'm working out with weights, every day I'm doing 100 push-ups, which is not many. It's not that many push-ups, but I do it in the morning to wake myself up, or I do it to give me more energy. And what I found is it really, really does. When I need a surge of energy, I just get down and do 20, 25 push-ups and surge of energy. I have soccer session on here, so I have to practice in some way every day. I have read, I have tea, which I make like this health tea. I have journal. I have lumosity, for any of you who've ever heard of that. I have cold shower. I have meditation. Now, this is a lot of stuff going on at once, and I don't recommend you do this many at one time. The reason I'm doing this many at one time is because I've already completed many 30-day challenges before, so I'm more used to this. Some of these things I have on here, I have already almost developed its habits. I'm just kind of now, solidifying them as habits. Like yoga is something I've been doing. Meditation is something I've been doing for a while. But I wanted to just make sure I stuck with it every single day. And I've been seeing great results from this. And again, it's not even like the breathing technique takes me 15 minutes in the morning. The yoga, it's only 10 to 20 minutes. The 100 push-ups takes less than 5. Reading 10 minutes. Makes the tea, it's 5 minutes. Journaling takes 5 to 10 minutes unless I really get into it. Lumosity takes about 10 minutes. Meditation, the meditation is usually an hour. So that's the exception to the rule on this one. But the cold shower takes 3 to 5 minutes. But by doing this every day, you build momentum, you build consistency, and the results, I can tell you it's worth it. It is so worth it. And the thing with these good habits is it leads to more good habits. Like the things that doing the no social media, or it's not no social media, it's social media restrictions. Like I'm restricting myself from doing certain things, has led me to discover things that have been helpful. Because I've been doing things that are beneficial for my life, that are beneficial to my growth, it's led me almost, I don't know by what force, but it's led me to other things that have been helping me. It's led me to books that have helped me, like The War of Art. The only reason I was able to get that book recommended to me is because I was listening to a podcast, a Joe Rogan podcast, and they were going over health by Dr. What's her name? It's Dr. Rhonda Bryan, is it? I think I didn't get that right. But and they were talking at the end of the podcast, Joe Rogan's like, I got to give you this book by Stephen Pressfield. It's great. I give it to like every one of my guests. I bought like 50 and I hand it out. And it's The War of Art. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. And he was explaining it. And I'm like, I got to buy this. I got it. I bought it. I read it. Actually, I think I'm like really close to finishing it. I'm going to reread it again pretty much. And it's been great. It's led me to some more ideas which are helping me. You can see all of this is like a domino effect. You start good habits and it leads to more good habits and more good habits and more good habits and more good information and more stuff that helps you. It's forward positive momentum. If you ever had just like a week or two where things just went your way, like it's like that, but you're doing it long term, because you're instead of allowing that to happen to you, instead of how do I put this? Instead of like mindlessly or how do I put this? We'll say mindlessly letting those things happen to you, where like things just happen to you, you're making them happen. Right? So instead of being like, I'm just going to wait for good things to happen, and then every now and then sometimes things just fall in place a little bit. Like I remember a friend of mine, he had a week or two which went really well, and we were talking, and this was a while ago, but he was like saying, yeah, these last few weeks have been really good. And then I think I hung out with him like a week later, and then he was like saying, this thing happened, it's ruined this and blah blah blah. And he said to me, this is not like exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of, man, this sucks, everything was going so well until this happened. And I thought about that after we stopped hanging out, and I was like, the reason he said it like that is because he wasn't exactly making things happen. He wasn't taking control. He was coming from the perspective that things are outside of his control. And there are things that are outside of your control, but your reaction to things like these good habits that I'm developing and you can absolutely develop as well, those things are within your control. Your emotional state is within your control. There is so much more within your control than you realize. Most things that pertain to you are within your control. You can't control other people. You can't always control this external environment or circumstances. To a certain extent you can, but not always. But what I realized when he told me that is the reason the things just kind of fell into place when that week happened, or 2 good weeks that he had. Like, were just things, and I've had it happen to me too, like when I was in high school or my past, where things were just going really well. And I may have subconsciously been doing things to make that happen, but because I wasn't consciously doing things to make that happen, when it fell apart, I just thought, oh, it's because life's unfair. No, you can make these things happen. And that's what, like, when you're developing good habits and you're growing and you're doing all this stuff, it builds upon each other. It builds upon the last thing. And there will be stumbling blocks, and there'll be times when, and this happens to me too, where resistance comes in. I'm not saying like it's just good. There might be something that comes in, but you recognize that you don't have to be a victim. You recognize that you don't have to be the person that goes, oh, I guess life just sucks and life's unfair. You just go, okay, how am I going to approach this? How am I going to combat this? What is my next step? You focus on the things that you do have control of instead of focusing on the things that are outside of your control, like someone else's reaction to you, like, the weather. I don't know. Like whenever someone tells me it's raining here, I can't practice, it always baffles me because it's a lame excuse. Yes, that may limit you to a certain point, but like there are things you can do inside. There are things you can still do. Don't use something that's outside of your control as an excuse for you not being able to do something, because there's enough usually within your control to make something happen. So I went off on a huge tangent there, didn't I? But basically the point of this is, using that example of my friend, is if he had just realized that the things are actually within his control, the couple of good weeks he had where things just seemed to happen and fall into place, he had like a little bit of positive momentum, and he probably subconsciously made that happen. Or it may have just been that his external circumstances just lined up and good things happened. But the problem was when his external circumstances presented him with a challenge or something that, as he said, ruined it, instead of kind of pivoting from that, instead of facing that and challenging that and not allowing that to happen and taking control, he decided, oh, life's just unfair. Things were going so well, but now they're not going well because of this thing that happened. Okay? So I hope you can recognize that that's the wrong way to approach this, right? You have more control than you realize. And again, there are things outside of your control, and I'm not saying I want you to be a controlling person. I'm not. But I'm saying there are things within your control, like doing these habits. And when you start developing that positive forward momentum, you'll start feeling this. You'll start feeling that you really can control what you do. And I'm not trying to say this from like a big pedestal type place, because there are so many things that I have yet to do. There are many places I want to go. I'm in no way even close to achieving everything I want. Although there's some things to be said about that, like achiever's mindset. I'm trying to get out of that a little bit too. What I'm saying is I'm not trying to be like have the moral high ground here. I'm just trying to share some experiences with you and things that I've observed, and kind of my philosophies, because I think they're beneficial. I think they can help you. And I've noticed that when I followed these, because there have been times where I've fallen off the wagon, even recently. There have been times where I haven't followed through with these things, but it's always been better when I have gone back to doing the good habits, when I have gone back to prioritizing, when I have gone back to being clear what it is I want and taking steps towards that. Okay? And there have been clear benefits when I've been doing those things on a consistent basis. When I've been doing 30-day challenges and, really doing them properly, not just writing a list out and then going, that's what I'm doing. Writing a list out, writing the reasons out why I'm doing it, because when you internalize why you're doing it, and you can go back when you have a bad day and actually remind yourself, like I have a sheet right here. Like I have the 30-day challenge. It's literally labeled 30-day challenge reasons. And for meditation, I put the reasons I want to follow through with meditation: increased clarity, connecting to myself, separating myself from thoughts, being more present. One of my people I look up to says it will change my life. Hear my heart more, makes me feel happy and relaxed. Cold shower, pushes my comfort zone, increases immune system, more energy, better recovery, better skin, wakes me up. Lumosity, improved cognitive function, etc., etc., etc. So whenever I'm having a day where I don't want to follow through, I remember that, and I remember that the punishment and reward for not following through with these things is I don't get these things. Right? I won't get these things unless I follow through. And on the back of this, I wrote good reasons not to quit. First one I wrote is training your brain to quit early when the going gets tough. That's a good reason not to quit, because if you do, you're training your brain, like I said earlier, to quit when the going gets tough. Imagine if you can train your brain to keep going when it gets tough. If you can do that, I mean, you can face anything. If your automatic reaction to challenge and tough things to things getting tough is to keep going, that becomes a habit. I wrote on here, missing out on the skill building aspect, meaning I'm missing out on the skills I would otherwise have built if I followed through. Failing to expand your comfort zone. That's a good reason not to quit, because if I do quit, I fail to expand my comfort zone, and by expanding my comfort zone, I grow as a person. More things, open up to me. Weakening your sense of honor and integrity with yourself, which is huge. So as you can see, this is not just me writing something down. This is me fully committing to it. And again, I want you to go down to that article, and maybe, I'll make a video on this. Let me know if you want me to make a video on this of really, because I've done 30-day challenges, but I don't think I've gone this in depth on them. And, if you're interested, if a lot of you guys are interested, I will do a more in-depth thing where I show you the one I'm doing now and how I write out my reasons and reasons not to quit, and all that. But yeah, it's be serious about this, it's developing these good habits, developing these behaviors, developing the things that you want. It should be a really important thing for you. And getting back to kind of the original thesis and point of this whole podcast was consistency is going to get you there, right? Consistently doing it every day. That's the whole point of a 30-day challenge. That's the whole point of the video yesterday, or was it 2 days ago? If this is coming out on Sunday, it was yesterday, which is the whole point of the repetition video was so you can recognize that if you do repetition consistently, you'll start getting these things. You'll start growing. You'll start moving forward. There'll be hiccups. There'll be roadblocks, but you'll develop the habit of moving forward even when you're faced with the hiccups, you're faced with the obstacles, you're faced with the people that are trying to put you down, you're faced with the challenges, whatever it is. Doing these things, being consistent, builds that momentum to get through those things, and just essentially don't give up. Okay? So that was kind of a little rant. That was cool. The cool thing about some of these podcasts is sometimes I'll have a topic I start with, and by the time we get to the end, even though the topic I end with is like related to the topic I began with, I went on a complete tangent there to where I had no intention of getting into this in this podcast. It's just kind of where it went. And that's one reason I really love these podcasts, because it just allows me to speak to you openly without like a structure, which sounds weird, but I think sometimes like breaking down that structure is good, to where it's like just let what comes through come through. And that's one reason I really love this, because we went from consistency versus intensity to basically 30-day challenges and all this other stuff. And I think it allows for a lot more information I would have resisted had I tried to stick to something, be like, I have to do this in this podcast, instead of just saying, you know what, I'm going to start with this topic and then we'll see where we go. And I think that would have been limiting if I had restricted myself. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this podcast. This is, I really enjoyed this one. Okay, cool. We're doing good for time. We're below 40 minutes. So, let me know if you want a video on kind of a more in-depth how to do a 30-day challenge. Basically, I'll make a video on what Steve Pavlina talks about in his blog post. Again, I really recommend you look at that blog post. It won't take that long to read. And again, Steve Pavlina, I hope I'm saying that right, is someone who has been in self-development for decades. He knows what he's talking about. His blog is seriously like the #1 resource for self-development on the internet. If you type in self-development, in fact, I could do it right now. If you type in self-development, and sorry for the screaming in the background, it's my little brother, self-development, I think his website's the first one that comes up. Let's see if it is. Dictionary came up first, the dictionary. Okay, so when we go past the dictionary, let's see if we can find it. Oh, it's not. It used to be. There it is. It's on the first page of Google. Steve Pavlina, Personal Development for Smart People. So please check out that article. It really can, it's really going to reveal so much to you. It's really going to help you with your 30-day challenges for you guys who are actually serious on not just writing it out as like a novelty, but actually following through and completing a 30-day challenge and reaping the benefits of that 30-day challenge. And I really want that for you, because it feels really good, and it really does help build momentum to lead to even better habits from there. All right, guys, so thank you so much for tuning in. Please leave your comments down below, leave a like, share this. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing if you found this valuable. Let's do a hashtag. We'll do, let's see, I'm going to pick a random one from my sheet here. We'll do hashtag 100 push-ups, which is confusing, I know, but if you've listened to this whole thing, you remember me mentioning that. So do hashtag 100 push-ups. That's one of the habits I have on this thing. That lets me know that you've listened all the way through to this, and it also allows me to recognize who's made it all the way through. I always like to be able to identify who has, because, you know, it's just nice to know the people who actually care and listen and are committed, essentially, to listening to material that will help them develop and improve, instead of watching like Netflix or watching TV or playing video games and all that, because I know it is a commitment to listen to a 40, 50 hour long podcast or however long it is, but it's a great thing to do. I listen to podcasts all the time and it's fantastic. So put that in there. Again, if you leave me a question or a topic of discussion that you want me to do, I'm much more likely to do it if you have listened all the way. That's why I want you to put that hashtag in there, because I want to be answering the questions and covering the topics from the people who are actually listening. And even if you don't have a question or a comment, just put hashtag 100 push-ups in the comments to just let me know that you listened, even if you don't have any additional comments from there. All right, guys, once again, thank you so much. Again, thank you so much for 50,000 subscribers. I knew we could do it. I always knew we could get to this point. I know that we can get to 100,000. I know that we can keep going with this and keep building and growing and influencing people, hopefully in a positive way. But it is seriously surreal to have hit it, and you know, I'm just filled with so much gratitude because of it, and just thank you so much. And before I get all soppy on you, I'm going to end it. So once again, guys, thank you, and I will have hopefully a video out for you tomorrow. See you in that.